Hi everybody, this is Father Warner D'Souza, and today I'd like you to join me as we understand the Gospel of Luke, and specifically we're looking at chapter 6 verses 20 to 26. If Matthew had his Sermon on the Mount, which we read in chapter 5 verses 1 all the way to chapter 7 verse 29, then Luke pens his Sermon on the Plain. In Luke's account, this is Jesus' second major policy statement of his ministry. Previously, in Luke chapter 4, verses 14 to 30, he had proclaimed good news to the poor. Now, to those poor, he gives them a set of attitudes. Clearly, Luke is setting an agenda for Jesus. This is the Messiah that has come for all, but who makes a preferential option for the poor. For most of us today, the very word poor wraps itself around an outcome, namely material poverty, which would make today's reading very hard for an affluent person to swallow. For the 4 Beatitudes in Luke's Gospel are followed by 4 woes for those who are rich. So here's the question: how could Jesus, who has come for all, now start excluding some? It makes sense, therefore, for us to examine this text in order to understand what Jesus wanted to say. The focus of Jesus' address is the disciples, not to be confused exclusively with the apostles. These are those, like us, who follow Jesus freely and hence make a choice in accepting his calling and way of life. Despite the fact that most of us were born Christian by convention, it is in the reception of the sacrament of confirmation that we accept Jesus freely as a disciple by conviction. Remember that Jesus has never held a gun to our head and forced us to be his disciples. His words were, "If you wish to be my disciple." In addressing the disciples and us, Jesus is asking us to make a choice in our way of life and is not declaring a particular social class blessed. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus is reconstituting a new Israel. Remember that a few days ago, he picked 12 apostles. His reconstitution of the 12 tribes of Israel. Hence, the kingdom that Jesus establishes is not exclusively of the poor, but one that freely chooses to be poor. It is hardly possible that Jesus, who in verse 20 is addressing his disciples, was addressing an affluent group of people. It would be cruel to tell a suffering people that poverty is a virtue, for it can never be, especially if the consequences is starvation and fundamental deprivation. So what was on Jesus' mind when he spoke these words? Through this gospel, Luke intended to reach out to a Gentile Christian flock, many of whom perhaps were well-to-do. Jesus is not making a virtue out of physical poverty, as much as he is calling his hearers to make a choice to live simply, so that others may simply live. The awareness to such a call will encourage one to care for the hungry, share one's possessions, be sensitive to those who suffer or mourn, and stand up for those excluded or targeted by society. Look at verse 22 of chapter 20. Jesus hailed this free choice of our discipleship with the words Makarios, or as translated, blessed. Scholars tell us that the word blessed or Makarios in Greek is not some pie in the sky when you die, but really a congratulations received by the disciples already here on earth. The blessings of God begin here on earth and are experienced in all its glory in the presence of the eternal King. I hope this message touches your heart and helps you also to become a lover of God's Word. Now I need you to do two things as I ask you to do. Today, please make sure that you share this message with your friends and families. It's important that we share God's Word with people. Very often, people perhaps even don't want it. But because we are constantly persistent with the goodness that we have to share, we might just transform someone's life. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do so. I want to wish you truly from my heart a blessed and a very, very happy day. God bless you.